As I alluded to at the top of the show, a gunman on a rooftop opened fire on Independence Day in suburban Chicago land on Monday, killing at least 6 people, wounding at least 30, and sending hundreds of marchers, parents with strollers, and children on bicycles fleeing in terror, say police. Authorities said a man named as a person of interest, Robert Crimo, was taken into police custody on Monday evening after an hours-long manhunt in and around Highland Park, an affluent community of around 30,000 on Chicago's North Shore. Now, I've always known Highland Park because I remember growing up, that's where we always knew Michael Jordan lived. And so, you know, they got to have a lot of money. They got to have a lot of money to live out there in Highland Park. But this is the sort of downside to having the type of society that we have that has always been so bathed in violence and fetishizes violence so much. Eventually, it makes its way out to the suburbs as well. Okay, you can't just keep the inner cities of America flooded with weapons and think that that's just going to stay within the city limits. And you can't have a military-industrial complex that bombs and kills up black and brown people all over the world and gives us back so many soldiers who are wounded mentally, physically, spiritually, to the point where 23 soldiers commit suicide every single day here in the United States of America. And again, expect that to stay over there. A lot of America's issues, even with white supremacy and these sort of militia groups that we've seen pop up over the last few years, a lot of this comes from our military-industrial complex. A lot of it. This author, Catherine Ballou, actually talked about how a lot of the white supremacist militias that have done the type of violence that have become very commonplace here in America, that we saw really explode on January 6th, but even people like Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, a lot of it is rooted in the military-industrial complex.
I think the thing that really brought these activists together was a shared experience of the Vietnam War. Now, for some of them, this had to do with literal combat in Vietnam. And for veterans and active duty troops that came into the movement in its early formation, that certainly was the case. But this story about the Vietnam War became something much bigger and broader, and something that was open to people who didn't fight, and open to women, and open to younger activists. And the idea was sort of that the government was the site of betrayal, the site of all problems, and a direct threat to their nation. So the Vietnam War was really the catalyst that brought these activists together, and it also provided the uniforms, language, tactics, and weapons that escalated the impact of this movement over the years that followed. We can see that across the run of American history, the best predictor for surges in right-wing violent activity and militant activity the best predictor is not poverty or immigration or reactionary mindset or the advances of communities of color. The best predictor is the aftermath of warfare. We see surges of the Klan after the Civil War, after World War I, after World War II, after Korea, after Vietnam, and we're seeing one now with the global war on terror. I skipped the Gulf War, but of course the Gulf War fueled the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, which was carried out by a white power activist with other movement connections. And one thing to think about here is that this is really not just veterans. In fact, the research shows us, coming out of sociology, that all measures of violence are higher in the aftermath of warfare. So it isn't that war is creating violence among these groups. It's that these groups, which use opportunistic recruitment and radicalization practices, are able to take advantage of this broader disaffection and violent tendency in society in those moments. And that's what really escalates their membership numbers and creates opportunities for violent impact.
So there you go. America's violent military industrial complex feeds white supremacists, feeds militia groups, feeds the type of reactionary violence that you see here in this country. Now, this shooter, Robert Crimo, he was a Trump supporter. If you look at his social media. Now, I'm not somebody, since I've been here, I don't look at Trump supporters as all the worst people in the history of the world. They're about half of the population, okay? Unless you want a civil war or something and are ready for a civil war, I don't think that just vilifying people because of who they vote for is a productive strategy, for especially if you're on the left. I'm on the left. Maybe some of you are not on the left. Maybe some of you are centrist. But as a left-wing populist who has seen the type of degradation of opportunities for working class and poor people, even working class and poor whites, thanks to things like NAFTA, permanent trade relations with China, and GATT and other things that helped normalize sending American jobs either south of the border or overseas, I've seen a lot of those people have their lives upended, uprooted, and I feel bad for those people too, okay? Now, I know a lot of those people had no love for us when bad things were happening in our community for a million years, but ultimately, again, you live in a society. You live in a society. What happens to us eventually will happen to you. That's what the late, great Dick Gregory said. You know, what they do to me today, they'll do to you tomorrow. And so they sent the jobs from Gary, Indiana, and from Flint, Michigan, and from Detroit, Michigan, and Cleveland, Ohio, back in the 60s and 70s. And those people sat out in the suburbs watching, cackling, watching our communities degrade. And a lot of them had no sympathy for us, as a lot of us descended into drug addiction, drug abuse, domestic violence, street gang violence, all the type of violence that has, unfortunately been accustomed to places like here in Gary, Indiana, the former murder capital of America, and places like Detroit, Michigan, the former murder capital of America, or Flint, or Newark, New Jersey, wherever, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, lots of these cities in the Rust Belt, what is called the Rust Belt, in this part of the country, and I understand that. And now, once the 80s started, and people like Ronald Reagan destroyed helped destroy the Air Traffic Controllers Union, helped break that strike, enabled the financialization of the American economy so that we don't make things anymore. Our economy is just basically people in suits making lots of money off of rent seeking. And now a lot of their communities are degrading, and they are degrading. The violence has come for them now. The violence has come for a lot of people in their communities, and drug addiction. The hopelessness and despair that we felt in the 70s with heroin or with crack in the 80s, a lot of those people feel now with heroin and opiates. OxyContin is just heroin in time-release capsules, folks. And that's how a lot of people who get addicted to these pills end up on heroin, on street drugs. Because once they can no longer get the prescription from their doctor, they end up on heroin. And so I understand that now their communities feel hopeless in a lot of instances, even people with who have some means, even people who don't necessarily have intergenerational poverty, but people who just feel aimless. You have a lot of young men who just feel aimless in their communities and ours. So again, the lesson is what happened to us in the 60s and the 70s is happening to them now. And they're not taking it too well, as we didn't take it too well. And so the moral of the story is that we are a society. And so, yes, I feel bad that we have millions of men of all races who feel hopeless and are in despair right now. It is not productive for me to just say, I only care about the black ones. Okay? Because if I only say I only care about the black ones, then the white ones are going to pick up AR-15s and start shooting up random things, and I may be the person in the supermarket that they shoot up. Or somebody in my family might be the person that they shoot up in the supermarket, or might shoot up at the carnival, or shoot up at the 4th of July parade, or in the movie theater. Just like for many years, they said, well, I don't care about no black people getting killed in these inner cities. I couldn't care less. Until somebody robs their son, somebody robs their daughter, sticks a knife in their back, busts a cap in their behind. Now you care. You care now. You care now. So, again, this is a tragic situation. All these situations are tragic situations. One thing I like about the dialogue that me and Rev have here on the show, we always talk about how essentially there is a crisis with masculinity in this country. I don't just think that's a white thing. We can walk around any urban inner city in America right now and see the level of violence going on in Chicago, in the city of Gary. We're going to talk about that later on, unfortunately. And see that this is a crisis all around. And this isn't just something that you're going to be able to incarcerate yourself out of. You're not going to mass incarcerate your way out of the type of sensationalist violence that we're seeing in this society. Whether it's mass shootings in the suburbs or mass shootings in Gary. You're not going to be able to mass incarcerate your way out of this one, Joe Biden. We've got work to do spiritually, economically. We're going to have to get better as a society. And we have our first caller. Hello, caller.
Hey, Scott.
What's up, brother?
Just call you, tell you my
I can't hear you. Could you speak up, sir?
Yeah, I was just telling you that my babysitter was late, but you are on fire tonight, bro.
Oh yeah, well thank you.
You are hitting on all. It's funny that you mentioned this because I just bought a book talking about nihilism in the black community. I just read an article from David French talking about the three Americas and about this, to forget this notion that these mass shootings are like one-off events, that this is more like a slow riot.
Yep.
And he liked it. I'm trying to remember, did I send you a copy of the podcast? I think I did. I know I sent one to Natalie, too. And they were talking about how the first one lowered the bar for the next one, which lowered the bar for the next one.
Yep.
And we are in the range now where, like that guy that wanted to kill Kavanaugh, he did it because he said his life had no meaning.
Right.
Wow. So I'm here, and man, you are on it tonight.
Thank you, Rev. Thank you.
You are on it.
Yes, everybody, it's the Rev. The Rev has joined us. Yes. Yes.
As Coach Franklin say, preach, preacher.
But now here's the thing. Here's the thing I also saw about this that was sort of, okay, the Rev is coming in the building. Okay, folks. He's on his way. So while the Rev is getting seated, I will continue to talk. But this young man was 21 years old, but they said that he was essentially arrested without any incident. And man, this is the wrong week to take a white mass shooter without incident, considering that what we just saw in Akron, Ohio.
Oh God!
But we're always seeing this. We always see these guys. It's always like, oh well, we just talked them down. Well, yeah, I mean that's what the police are supposed to do, and so it's important to understand that, to point that out, that he was talked down. You know what I mean? I'm sure they said he tried to get away, but ultimately he was talked down, and they arrested him. He's already confessed to the crime. Did you see that, Rev?
Really?
Yeah, he's confessed.
Not that I'm surprised.
He's confessed. Now, I believe there's over 30 people who have been injured by this attack. They said the gunman used a very high-powered rifle to fire from atop a commercial building where he was very difficult to see. They said he was dressed in women's clothing, Rev. Did you see that?
Yeah, that's how he escaped.
I mean, that takes us a level of planning that is...
a level of weird planning.
Yeah, weird planning. But he's not the first criminal. I've heard of other criminals doing stuff like this, dressing in women's clothing in order to get away with certain crimes. So there is that's only first degree murder. You can only say that they had deliberate ideas. But still, as I was talking to you about on the phone, this is not a one-off thing, as you said. This is I like the analogy of it as a slow riot, but. Again, when you have this many young men in your society who feel like their lives have no meaning, wow, this is what you get.
Yeah, the thing I wonder about, and this is totally, out. It's a curveball, but imagine at this situation, people see a guy, and you've seen his pictures. He is not clean shaven.
Nope.
They see a guy with a goatee and a dress, and nobody says anything because, we don't want to.
Yeah, not these days. You get canceled very quick.
So they see him. They don't say anything about him. He walks through with a goatee and a dress.
Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, like you said, he wasn't clean shaven. It's not. I mean, he didn't put too much effort. He just had women's clothing on. But you're right, he wasn't even clean shaven. So you can't even say, well, maybe he was just a handsome woman. Okay, no, this guy he just was a dude in a dress.
But nobody was gonna say that. No one was gonna say, hey, officer, there was this weird looking guy in a dress.
Right.
Because now you're going to be accused of, are you transphobic?
Yeah, you're a bigot. You're a bigot.
You're stereotyping.
But see, these are the types of things, and this is why I'm so hard on liberals on this show. These are the things, instead of dealing with our crises of young men's jobs being sent overseas, on our instances of communities and essentially falling apart in the inner cities and in the suburbs alike. Instead of that, we focused on pronouns. We focus on safe spaces. We focus on all these things that have nothing to do with the material well-being of people. And so, again, it's become this sort of the word police, the thought police. These people have become so oppressive in their rhetoric and their ideas that, they actually contribute to this, I think, in a lot of ways, because our society just feels like it's so exhausting to live in this world where these people are constantly essentially policing every thought you have and making you out to be, some bigot because you see a guy in a dress and think that, hey, well, that's a dude in a dress.
He's a she.
Yeah, I actually had that. I actually had an incident, not me personally, but I was at the Dollar General in Miller about a year ago, 2 years ago, and it was around Christmas time, and there was a person there who was a taller than me. I'm 6 feet tall, and this person had to be around 6'4". Okay. Had a beard, had a ponytail, and minimal makeup. And the salesperson said, "Sir, we don't have this." And this person went the hell off in the Dollar General. "I am not a man, I am a woman. Can't you see that I'm a woman?" Again, this person is towering over me, okay? And I'm not a short man. I'm about 6 feet tall, maybe 6'1". This person was about 6'4", okay?
Oh, man.
Again, and wearing men's clothes. Again, it wasn't even wearing a dress. You can't even say it was wearing this person was wearing a dress. They were wearing a Carhartt jacket, jeans, and just had a ponytail and minimal lipstick on, and again had a complete meltdown because somebody said, "Sir." Yeah, it was the most surreal thing ever.
Oh man!
I hurried up and got out of there because I was afraid they might come back and shoot it up.
Man, we're living in interesting times.
Yeah, let's get this caller really quick.